Welcome to Crosstalk. I'm getting so excited because you'll see how God will reveal himself through these very ordinary items. So come along and let's see what we find out about our God. I am so excited you joined us. You know, we're starting the journey with the people of Israel, and they're starting to wonder who this Yahweh God really is. I mean, they don't know him. So God is going to reveal himself through different and ordinary things. I know this child. His parents were having some economical issues, some financial problems, and one day he overheard that. And so they see him very sad in a corner, and they're wondering why he's so sad. One day they say, "What's the problem, son?" He says, "I overheard you, and you said that there was not enough money, and I wasn't sure if you had enough money to feed me and to clothe me." And the parents said, "Oh, we were just talking about bigger things, where we would live and stuff like that. We are your parents. We always will take care of you." Well, God had to teach that to his people, the people of Israel, because they didn't really know him. And today we start a journey in the Exodus and from there on to David and the prophets, where God, through his names, starts revealing who he really is. So let's get back to the board. We have already discussed how important it is that you see the whole Bible as one unit, because the whole Bible really is about Jesus Christ. It's the history of redemption from beginning to end. It's not just scattered stories. So let's review what we have already seen, shall we? We have Adam. Everybody knows he's the first man, right? We have Noah. We have the flood with him. We then have Abraham. Now, by now, we have only started the book of Genesis. In here, we are in Genesis 12. Abraham has a son, Isaac. And from Isaac comes Jacob. So we have Jacob here. And we're still in Genesis, because you see the whole Bible is the history of redemption. Now, Jacob, of course, will have his name changed to Israel. Now, Israel will have sons. And here we have tribes. And here we have now the nation of Israel starting. Well, Moses comes along. And after a few years, we have King David. Now, by now, we are in 1000 BC. You know that we will have the kingdom here. Here we have the people of God, the nation of God, the kingdom of God. So here we have the whole history of the Bible. It's like a history map. After that comes Solomon, and then the kingdom gets split, and then we have them taken in captivity. The northern kingdom, 722 BC. The southern kingdom, 587 BC by Babylon. They come back. And we have the post-exilic, after the exile of Israel, period, 500s and 400s BC. And then already we have the Greek Empire and then the Roman Empire right after it. And Jesus is born under the Roman Empire. So this is the whole history of the Bible. So whenever you talk about anything related to the Bible, any story, whether it's Samson or David or Jonah, you have to know where you are in the history of the redemption, because the whole Bible is the history of redemption. So we're going to take it now with the people of Israel. So we're here in the time of Moses. So we are on the Exodus. Exodus is a word that is made of two words, exodos, and it actually means on the way out. And God is going to start revealing He's going to start revealing to the people of Israel who he really is, because they don't really know. All they know is that he just delivered them. As a matter of fact, take your Bibles. And if you're home, get in the habit of getting your Bible and a paper and a pen so we can study together. What do you say? So, Exodus 15 is the great song of deliverance. We already talked about the Exodus before in a previous program. So they just left Egypt, and they're on the way to the promised land. They're woohoo all the way through because, Yahweh has delivered them. There's this beautiful song called the Song of Moses. And actually, it's not about Moses. It's about Yahweh. And Yahweh, well, he is the great God of Israel. And his name is a play on the verb to be. He is who he is, and he will do what he will do. He's a sovereign God. More than 10 times here it says, Yahweh has delivered us. Yahweh is a warrior. Yahweh this and Yahweh that. And okay. But the chapter is not even over when they start having problems. And they start having problems that they don't know what to do about. And God is going to reveal himself as their provider. Because, see, they don't know this God. So as soon as they go to the desert, actually, come with me to Exodus chapter 15, verse 22. Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went out into the wilderness, and they went 3 days. So we're only 3 days from that woohoo song that we started with. And something happens. They found no water. So will this God that redeemed us also protect us and also provide for us? I mean, will this God really know what to do with us in the middle of the desert? And so this is like these parents telling the child, we'll protect you, we'll provide for you, we'll have food and shelter, and you don't have to worry about that. But they worried because they had no water. I mean, I even have a little bottle of water just to speak this 27 minutes. They went 3 days and they found no water. So this is when our problems start. And God will reveal a new name, added to his name Yahweh, that he has already revealed. I am who I am, he said. But who is this I am? Okay, let's continue. They did what they will do throughout the Exodus. They started grumbling. They started, this God doesn't know what he's doing. I know many of us have that type of response many times because we really, we don't know. Is this God really with us? Can he take care of us? Well, this is what they did. Verse 23. They came to Marah. Marah means bitter. It's actually a play on the word marim in Hebrew that means bitter. So they found no water, but then they found water. When they came to Marah, then they could not drink the water of Marah, for they were bitter. Like I said, marim already means bitter. And that's why it was named Marah. See, they had no water, and all of a sudden they see water far away, and they say, woohoo, this is our moment, we're going to get water. Have you ever had your expectations raised just to be let down even worse than it was at the beginning? See, Israel didn't know this God. And they said, well, we're thirsty. Well, they see water, say, well, maybe he provided this water for us. But when they get there, it's bitter. Has it happened to you? Oh, I want to get married, and you do get married, and then you're like, but this is not what I was expecting. This is a bitter relationship. Or I want to have children, and I can't wait to have children. Then you have children, and then they're teenagers, and you're like, this is bitter. Well, they started grumbling. And they grumbled against Moses. Verse 24, the people grumbled at Moses, saying, what shall we drink? This water that we thought we had is not good, it's bitter. And look at what happens. They grumbled at Moses, but Moses is also developing a pattern. He cries out to the Lord. So the people grumble at Moses, and Moses in turn turns to the Lord. And he says, let's actually read it here, verse 25. He cried out to the Lord, and the Lord, every time you see the word Lord in capital letters, is actually the name Yahweh in Hebrew. So Yahweh showed him a tree. What a strange thing. Okay, I'm going to look for a little piece of wood here. Showed him a tree. What does the tree have to do with the water? Well, very little, doesn't it? And so it says here that the Lord showed him a tree, and he threw it in the water. Okay. So he threw the tree in the water. And then look what happened. The water became sweet. Now, this is the strangest God because they don't know him, and he's starting to reveal to him much more than water and bread. He's starting to reveal to them who he really is. See, he says, okay, there are bitter waters, find a tree, put it in, now it's sweet. Now, these were actually visual aids because God was starting to reveal new names, new sides of him to this new people. And let's read it here. Then he cried out to the Lord, verse 25. He showed him a tree. He threw it into the water, and the waters became sweet. There he made for them a statue and regulation, and then he taught them something. He taught them something. This is the first problem they've encountered in the desert. It's the first time. They don't know anything about the cross. They don't know anything that will happen in the history of the world. They just know they have no water. But he's going to start teaching them the plan of salvation in the most ordinary things. And so he says, okay, let me tell you who I am, verse 26. If you will give earnest heed to the voice of Yahweh, your God, because I am your God, by the way, I will take care of you. I am your provider. As a matter of fact, God says at the end of verse 26, I, the Lord, I am your healer. I am the Lord your healer. I have the ability to take your bitter places and turn them sweet. I have that ability. And in Hebrew, that name of God is Yahweh Rophe. Yahweh Rophe. That's the title of our program today. He's starting to teach them that not only will he give them water, but that he has this ability to take something bitter and make it good. That's who he is. That he is actually a healer. That he can heal their hearts, and he can heal their marriages, and he can heal their country, and he can heal their children, and he can just heal them. Because he's starting to teach them about the plan of salvation. And so he says, I am Yahweh Rophe. I am the Lord your healer. So you have nothing to worry about. And then after they understood that, then he said, okay, it's time for you to get some water. They came to Elim. Elim, by the way, means large trees. So God knew all along where there were trees and water and everything they needed. He was just teaching them a lesson, you see. He was just revealing who he was. Because the Bible is developmental. God reveals a little bit, and he reveals more, and he reveals more. And Hebrews 1 would tell us, yes, but he revealed the most in his son Jesus. That's when we really get it. But at this time, he's starting to reveal who he is and his name and his abilities. And so here it says, they came to Elim, the large trees, where there were 12 springs of water and 70 date palms, and they camped there beside the waters. Of course, there was water and everything they needed all along, but God used this opportunity. Now, let me tell you how interesting it is that the first 3 stories that we have, they're stories of bread, water, and actually water, bread, and water. Because God is teaching them through this time that they actually can learn who he is. They can learn who he is because he is much more than what they understand. And they have water needs. He says, throw a piece of wood in the water. Next, they need bread. Okay, God says, I'm going to give you bread, but I'm not going to give it to you in a normal way. No, the bread is going to fall from heaven, and from heaven you will get this other kind of bread, so much so that they didn't know what it was. And they said, what is it? And they called it manna, because manna means, what is it? But you know that during the provision of the bread, he taught them the Sabbath. See, the first time you actually find the word Sabbath in the Bible is in Exodus 16 with the manna. And then in Exodus 17, again, they need water. And he says, okay, now I'm going to give it to you in a different way because I'm going to teach you something else about me. And then they had a rock. Now, all these symbols will be used later in the New Testament to say, God was teaching you things about the plan of salvation all along. As a matter of fact, Jesus will say in John 6, I am the bread that came down from heaven. I am the water. If you, by the way, are thirsty, Jesus says in John 6, come to me, because I'm the real water. So God is teaching them who he is. Now, I know that many of us have trouble understanding that this God we serve actually saved us. That our salvation was something that he did. He healed us. See, sin is a disorder, is a disease. And we needed healing. And so God said, look, I am the God that will do that. You are my people, and I will take care of you. Is there any way that you can come to believe that I am your Father who made you in my image, and I actually can take care of you? Is there any way that we can come to that understanding, says God? Don't be fretting around in your spiritual life saying, okay, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? How am I going to be saved? I need to find some water. I need to find some bread. And Jesus would say to you, I am the bread, and I am the water, and I am everything you need. So rest in your journey. I think it's really interesting how God starts revealing his names to Israel so that they can have a journey of knowing that they have a God who protects them. Like this little child, are you sure you can feed me? Are you sure you can give me a shelter? And the parents are going, we are sure. So don't be afraid. We are sure. Now, you know this topic of healing will be developed throughout the Bible. You know, sin is talked about as a disease, as a leprosy. And the fact that God had to do something. You know, a lot of people think that this little piece of wood is typological. You know, typology means that God is using symbols to teach greater truths. In Genesis 22, we have Isaac who is carrying the wood. And most scholars believe that the wood is typological of the cross because Jesus would take the place of the beloved Son and die instead of humanity, just like the little animal died instead of Isaac. Well, a lot of people believe that this piece of wood is typological of the cross. I mean, what a strange visualization to have a piece of wood thrown in the water to make it sweet. It's because God is starting to teach them that he would intervene in the history of the world, in the bitterness that is sin through the cross. But whether it's typological or not, the bottom line is that Jesus, through his death, did for us something we could not do for ourselves. Actually, when we get to the prophets, you know, we're just starting the journey in the Bible. And God is revealing himself from little to great in Jesus Christ. So here, when we get to the prophets, they're starting to understand a little more about who God really is. And I'm not sure if Isaiah fully understood his own chapter of Isaiah 53. It would have been hard to imagine that God was actually going to come and become flesh and die in our place. But he wrote it under inspiration, and he gave such details. And look at Isaiah 53, verse 4. Surely our griefs he would bear. See, he took our bitterness. And our sorrows he carried. Yet we ourselves esteem him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. But I love this verse because it gives us this thing he did for us, this piece of wood that was given to humanity so that the bitter will come sweet. Verse 5, he was pierced for our transgressions. That was our bitterness, but he took it upon the cross. He was crushed for our iniquities. And then look what it says here. The punishment for our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. The word healed appears again. Yes, because the cross actually, see, if you could see the cross as a place of healing, if you could understand that God was starting just to teach Israel all the symbols and who he was and all his names, Yahweh Rophe, I am the Lord your healer. Of course he's our healer, but he is not just our healer for our bitter water. He is our healer for our whole bitter problem of the sin of the world. And so he says, look, he says, by his stripes, when Jesus died on the cross, we are healed. Yes, God actually did throw a tree in our bitter waters of the world. And he said, hey, no, they're sweet. By his stripes, we're healed. Now, I understand that some people already got the plan of salvation, that they understand that it was God's intervention and his ability to heal that made us reconciled with God. But after you understand this as a theological truth, how can you work with that in your daily life? How can you say, okay, but you don't understand the bitterness I'm in. You don't understand that my marriage is bitter. No, I understand. I don't understand all the things because we all go through different problems. But what would it be like to go through life with what I call a Sabbathed heart? You know, a heart that is always at rest. When your mind is at rest and your heart is at rest and you say, okay, I don't know what to do about this. And God says, hello, I'm Yahweh Rophe. I'm the Lord who heals you. And what would happen if you say, yeah, but I'm missing this and I don't have that? Hello, I am Yahweh, your Rophe. I am your healer. If you walk away today with this understanding that God is in fact your healer, then your mind will learn to turn directly to God at any time. When you have a need, when you have a lack. You know, sometimes people fall into times of distress. And I can't really explain all the pain in the world. I really can't. And I'm not trying to. I'm not one of those religious people that says, well, if you prayed enough, nothing would happen to you. No. As a matter of fact, I see a lot of very good people in the Bible that go through very hard things. What I do know is that because of what Christ did at the cross, he forever intervened, like that tree that was put in that bitter water, so that very soon God will once and for all intervene with all the problem of pain in the world. See, as a matter of fact, this is the way that the Bible ends. The Bible ends with that note. And you know, the book of Revelation is such an uplifting book. I know it has been misused a lot. I understand that. But, you know, really it's a worship book. 16 scenes of worship. Everybody praising the Lamb for having been on the tree that made the bitter sweet. And the way that it ends is saying, okay, now there will be no more pain and no more diseases and no more death. Because actually, we are going to a very sweet, sweet place. Chapter 21 of Revelation, verse 3 and 4. I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is among men, and he will dwell among them, and they shall be his people. And God himself will be among them, and he will wipe away. Do you have a tear today? Well, look at this here. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there will no longer be any death, death. There will be no longer any mourning, no crying, nor pain, for these first things have passed away. Oh, I can't wait for that day. I can't wait for the time in which what Jesus did on the cross will be translated into this world being over. And there will be no more pain. And there will be no more bitter places. You know, I don't know if you remember the story of Ruth. Naomi, her mother-in-law, had to leave Bethlehem because there was a hunger. And terrible things happened to her when she was on the other side of the Jordan. She lost her husband. She lost her 2 kids. When she comes back to Bethlehem, and she's bringing Ruth along, perhaps you remember the story. If not, you can read it in the book of Ruth. She said, you know what? Don't call me my name anymore. Don't call me Naomi anymore. Call me Mara. Ah, you recognize the name? Mara was the name of the place of the bitter waters. And now Naomi says, call me Mara because the Lord has dealt so bitterly with me. Oh, she had no idea that she would be a witness to a little baby between Boaz and Ruth that would be an ancestor of the Messiah, who would eventually be the one that really would be the healer of the world. So I want to tell you this. If you find yourself today in a place of not understanding God's plan, of a place of want, a place of lack, a place of bitterness, remember that God chose to reveal himself for the first time ever to his people after they saw him as the healer. He chose to reveal himself not just as the Redeemer, but as Yahweh Rophe, the Lord our healer. You know, he came to tell them, look, I am your God. I am the one that will heal you. They had no idea how yet, because they had not fully understood that the wood would be the cross, the real tree that would take away the pain of the world. This is Crosstalk, where we talk about Jesus Christ and him crucified. And we thank you for being with us. And please come back next time. God bless you.